Recording in progress.
Yep. Good morning, everyone. So, yesterday we learned about various techniques of communicating with the APIs. So, different API methods we learned, and what are the methods to communicate with API? One is XML HTTP request, another fetch promise, and we learned about how to use jQuery as X. These are the options. So we discussed how to communicate with the APIs and get the data and display data. And we learned about all the different types of issues with them. So what are the issues with XML, HTTP, and what are the issues with fetch and jQuery as X? We learned about that. Now they are all okay, and various occasions we can use them. But the major part with the React Virtual DOM, we have some third parties, as I told you. So we can use any third party. Today we will see one third party. So Axios, how we can use this Axios. So various third parties are available, and all these third party related concepts. You don't need every third party. One is enough to understand and how to deal with. So Axios, what is the concept about this is, so it is a JavaScript library. JavaScript library used to communicate with the APIs. So you can configure and handle AJAX calls using Axios. So it provides virtual DOM. So it provides virtual DOM interactions. So it provides virtual DOM interactions. And what is the key point is finally virtual DOM interactions. So implicitly uses XML HTTP. That means every AJAX have to finally depend on what? XML HTTP. But what are the features about Axios is it can handle CORS. So it can prevent cross-site scripting attacks. Yesterday given what is CORS and S. cross origin resource sharing, and XSS is cross site scripting attack. Scripting attack. And it can prevent cross page posting. So it can prevent request forgeries. So these are all some important key features of Axios. It is good in error handling. It provides good features for error handling. Right. Right. So when compared to the XML, HTTP, fetch, jQuery, AJAX, the better option is what? Axios. You can use third party. Lot of third parties are there, as I told you. So this is one good third party. And once you know how to use any third party, others will be similar. Only the methods will be changing. And their features, they claim different features. So let's see what these people majorly claim. So you can go to the official website, npmjs.com. npmjs is a Node Package Manager official website. So you have npm.js. I will just give a note. You can find various third parties, various third party libraries at here. You can find different third party libraries for different technologies also. For React, Angular, Java, .NET, different type of technologies, their relative libraries are supported by this npm.js, Node Package Manager. So you can search and you can use them. But when you are using any third party, you have to be very clear about that third party. You need to read everything about it because some failures will be there. Some third parties are not good for certain situations. So we have to ignore them. We need to read the complete documentations, what issues they are having, because these third parties are all MIT licensed. MIT licensed means they are not responsible for any issues if you face while using these libraries. You are on your own. You are using these libraries. Any issues will come. You can post a message in their official link, means in the official forum may be there. Maybe there, it's not sure every time. Some libraries have official forums. You can go there and ask them that this is not working. They will reply, and we cannot guarantee for that reply. So you have to solve issues by yourself if you got any issue when you are using these third parties. So we generally search for a third party. Suppose Axios is a third party. And you see what this Axios third party says. So the Axios third party says that you see the features, so many features are there. It makes an XML HTTP request from browser. We already know that because every Ajax people have to use the same. Every Ajax people have to use the same, right? And it makes HTTP requests from Node.js. It's okay. It is server side. Promise based, which already we know that fetch is also a promise based. What is the advantage of promise based? Promise based are by default asynchronous. They are promise based. So intercept request and response, transform request and response means implicitly they convert the data. That is okay. So because when we used fetch, when we used XML, we have to manually convert. It allows to cancel the request. It's okay. And automatically transforms JSON. Okay. That's also fine. And you see, so client side protecting cross-site request forgeries. Cross-site request forgery is one important problem yesterday I explained, right? So request forgery, that is cross-site request forgeries. So they claim these features. Other third parties claim some more features, but because we already use from several years, we know that they are also good in error handling. They are also good in handling multiple requests simultaneously. One more specialty about this is it can handle multiple requests simultaneously. So simultaneously at the same time, it can handle multiple requests. Multiple requests simultaneously at the same time. It is good in various concepts. So if you want to use them, remember from today onwards, every few examples everywhere we will use this Axios because we are working with lot of APIs. So you will learn more about it level by level. So many will be there. So technically, if I want to use this in my project, it is not a library of React inbuilt available. We have to separately install. So first step, what you have to do, install Axios for your project. npm install Axios and save. You need to set up this. So you import Axios into component. So you have to import so Axios from Axios. You have to import Axios from Axios. So you can make a request using various shorthand methods like Axios.get, Axios.post, Axios.put, Axios.patch, and Axios.delete. So, you know, in general interactions, get to fetch data, to submit data, and put is to allow modifying and to allow partial modify to remove. We will use all these request methods in later stage when we start using the project, when we start interacting with that. Right. So here how you make the request, because remember these are promise based. Promise based means syntactically what they have, access dot get, they use an URL, then they have a then function, and they have a then uses a callback. So then they have a catch function, it uses a callback. This then gets a response, right? Yeah. And finally, every promise have three functions. Every JavaScript promise have three functions. Then catch finally. Now, what is difference between the response that you returned in jQuery and the response returned in Axios is actually then, so it is a callback on success. So which returns response object with various response details. It have lot of response details like status code, like status text. Status is just status actually, status and status text. Status actually refers to code. So about headers, it is about the data. So the response that comes will be in different ways. That means the response that comes have a lot of details. What you saw about the response in XML HTTP. XML HTTP response is how many types you saw? Response text, response XML, response HTML. Three types of responses. Fetch response always binary. Whatever response is there, it is binary. jQuery is response native for what kind of data you are using. If it is a HTML, it returns a HTML response. So response is defined by using various, but here response have a lot of details. Response will return a status code. Status codes means so 200, 404. So what is status text? 200 means okay, 404 means not found, like that. Headers means the request type. Is it a get request? Is it a post request? What is the MIME type? MIME type means what type of content is coming as a response. All such information is present in header. And data is the data returned by URL. Whatever data that is returned by that particular resource, that is data. So response is not one. Response is an object here. This response object contains lot of details. In that we need data. You can use other details also. If there is an error, then it will return the response status code, status text like that. So you know rest of other options. Catch and finally yesterday I showed you. Catch is used to return an error object and finally executes always. Right. Let's see how we can make the request. So I am removing this Ajax jQuery thing I am removing. That means same logic. I am removing the jQuery related all the content. Okay, now there is no more data coming here. Now let's use Axios. So remember, this is the first time you are learning. So we are not designing complex examples, which we will do in the next level. We are just learning how to pull data from a JSON file and display that, right? Later we do all interactions, postings and editing, deleting, CRUD operations. We will learn how to do. Initially, first npm install what? Axios and save. So we are downloading this Axios library and it is ready. Okay. Once it is ready, you need to import. You have to import Axios from Axios. And already I no need to explain. I told you in JavaScript, you learned module systems. So some imports are in curly brace. Some imports are directly. That means, for example, we have import. It is not in curly brace, Axios. It is directly what? Axios. But above you have seen import. This is use effect, not directly use effect. You know the difference, right? What is the difference? So this is which export? If it is marked as default export, if it is marked as default export, you directly import. If it is marked as normal export, then you have to define within block. In JavaScript modules, you learn these techniques, how to handle them. Initially, this is Axios imported. Okay. We are using Axios.get method. And what is the URL? URL is product.json. And it uses a then, a callback function. Then is a promise function. Then we'll collect the response. It will collect the response. That's it. And whatever response data is there, you have to set product, whatever response. Now see, response have a lot of details. Response data, response headers, response status text. In that you need what? Response data. That's it. The data refers to the data present in that particular file. That's it. So if you want to handle the error, then you can use dot what? Catch. And you can get the error reason why it is rejected. So error. And you can report that error. So console.log something, whatever the error it returns. So now technically here it is going to fetch your data and display. It is more simple when compared to your fetch. Fetch is also okay, but fetch has two levels of depth. One, convert the binary data, after that collect the JSON data. But here directly data comes in the format how it is, and it is having lot of features which are internal. That means remember, React have lot of features which are internally suitable for that. That means you cannot physically see, but some features are internally configured. I will show you the detailed documentations. That means React related several features are internally managed, which you cannot see, but you can experience them when you are using application. So you don't need to write anything manually for that. You just use a recommended method. It will manage all the securities in the background. It will take care about that. So there are a lot of features related to security which you don't need to manage. It will automatically manage when various types of attacks are happening on your application. So that is what the advantage of these third parties. So this is another technique of fetching the data from any JSON and using that here. So we will take an example for this. So this is the same. Your JSON file is same. Data binding dot what? JSX. I will copy this. In data binding, so this is all the points. This time we are using what? Axios. So you learned all the techniques of how to access the data and display the data, how we can access data and display. So you learned actually one more technique, how to store the data. So you are not using directly variables for storing the data. You are using what? State. In a state, you are storing the data and you are accessing and using it. Whatever data comes, we are not directly using the data. We are storing in a state object. Which object it is? Product. In that state object, we are storing it and we are using it. So all these days, what you learned is data binding. And data binding means accessing data from a source and binding to the UI. So, but you should know that here, important, as I already in the first data binding, I explained a point, you should know that. So React supports one-way binding. React supports one-way binding. React supports one-way binding. One-way binding, you can say implicitly. It supports one-way binding implicitly. React supports one-way binding implicitly, and several people they talk about this feature as this is as a feature, this concept as a feature. That means when you ask what are important features of React, I told you first priority feature is virtual DOM. We already detailedly discussed about that shadow DOM, virtual DOM, and that is the first primary feature. Another major feature that people discuss about React is this one-way binding. But as I already told you, this is not satisfied for everyone. Up to certain requirements, it is okay. I already told you. For some people, Java is great. From some people, .NET is great. So you worship your .NET, another person will worship his Java. It is just like different religions who want to follow, you follow. So don't blame on this technology is not good. This technology is, every technology have its own problems. They have their own issues. They are not suitable for every situation. Java technologies are not suitable for certain type of apps. .NET is not suitable for certain type of apps. So they have their own problems. We cannot claim that this technology can do everything. There is no chance at all. So that is the reason some people are satisfied, very much impressed about this one-way binding, but we are not very much satisfied every time. Up to certain limits, it's good, very good. But in some occasions, it is not great. Right? Let's see why it is not great and why it is good. Because Angular people claim that we support two-way binding, that they claim as a feature. And React people claim that we support one-way binding only, that is feature. Both are Angular belongs to Google and this React belongs to Facebook. And if you are between these Google and Facebook people and ask which one is great, then it is depending on situation. It's not like this is best. That means actually what is this one-way binding is, what is advantage of this one-way binding is, for example, let's see. So I will add another component for our practice now. This is data binding I just added. So another example I will take another folder in the components. So one way, I just added one way, and a new file, one way dot what JSX. How to create a component export function one way, and it should return sim markup. Okay, and we will keep this in the startup. So here I kept in index, what is it? One way. In index, we are setting that one way in the startup. Okay, now here, what is this one way binding? What is the concept of one way binding? Let's see. Actually, the concept of one way binding, class container. Okay. Container fluid. Okay. So what happens here is we are having some data, constant and username, and set username is equal to use state, and we are storing some username. Now I need to bind this to a text box. Input type is equal to text box, and here I will just put a label just as username. Now what is the point is, I want to display the username here. That means whatever data is coming from this particular state, I want to display in text box. How to display that in a text box? To display in a text box, we have to bind with the attribute as value. You know, value is text box attribute which shows the value. Value is dynamically coming from where? Username. Okay. The same value below, I will keep a heading and we will say hello. And that same value we will use here, username. That's what we are doing. We are displaying that, inside, we are displaying that inside this text box and in a heading. Now, what is the concept here is, the concept is, so we have a username. This is the memory. Username is the memory. In that you have John value. So this is your state, right? In the state, there is username. You are accessing this and displaying in a text box. Good. You are accessing this and displaying in a paragraph or a heading. Now you are accessing and displaying. This is one way, right? Now, if any modification done in this text box, this modification should update in the memory. And that modification should reflect here. Am I right? Yes, sir? Right? So you done any modification in this text box, it should update back into the source in the variable. Generally, your JavaScript does, right? But in JavaScript, to do that, what you have to do, you have to write an event on key up, on change, on blur, on focus, because it is a text box. While value is changing in the text box, you should update in a variable, then how it will do? So you have to write an event on key up or on change of text box, then get the value and update the value here. So the point is, Angular people claim that we are two-way binding. Two-way binding means you don't write anything, you just modify, it will update. That means you get a value from a source and bind it to UI. You make any change in UI, it will bind back to the source. That is two-way binding. But React, you see, I am trying to modify. It is not modifying. It is not allowing. It is not allowing. It is not allowing to modify. I'm unable to type. So this is feature, they say. Now you tell me with your limited JavaScript knowledge, that this is a feature, then you will think that what you are saying, how this can be a good feature, right? Because for you, if it is updating back automatically, that is good feature. But React people claim that this is good feature. Accidental or intentional data updates will not happen until or unless a event is triggered. Event is triggered. So it prevents the data from automatically updating. It prevents the data from automatically updating. It prevents the data from automatically changing. There will be so many UI interfaces where we don't want to modify. Then generally, if you don't want to modify, what you do, you make them read only. Am I right? You use read only. You learned already read only in JavaScript, right? What you can do, you can assign a read only attribute so that it cannot allow modification. But by default, this is read only. That looks good. But where you want to collect the data and update the data, then this is not good. This is not good. So one direction, it's okay. Fine, very good. Security, very good. But if I want two directions, it is not possible. Then do you know what we have to do in React? In React, we have to again implement same like JavaScript. That means to handle two-way binding, we need to define event like what? On change. On change, we have to collect the value that is coming from text box and update in the state. We need to write the events for managing this. And remember, actually, to update the value in the variable, you can use lot of events like on key up, like on blur. You learned all these in JavaScript. On blur means when it loses focus. On key up means immediately when key is released, you can use on key press. Am I right? You can use lot of events for two-way binding. But in JavaScript, you can use different events. But in React, you can use only on change. This is only the event that you can use to handle two-way binding. There is no other chance. You cannot use any another event for updating the data back. You have only one event, that is on change. That's what they claim, that accidentally you key in something or you blur or you get focus into that element, it will not change. Which JavaScript can do. JavaScript can change on blur, it can change on focus, but it will not do anything until or unless you change the value, it will not change. That means two-way binding can occur only through one event. What is that event? On change. It will lock all other events. Generally, which is possible in our JavaScript. What you do in JavaScript? In JavaScript, jQuery, everywhere, what you do is, for example, we have a username text box. Input type is text. So ID is username. And we have a paragraph here. And what we do here, we are writing an event on change. On change as what? Some name change. Name change is the event. And we write a script here and a function is a name change. On name change, we will collect the username document get element by ID username dot value and display that in the paragraph inner HTML. We display that. So hello and username. right? We are using this. Now what happens is when I run this, you can see here, I'm using some name, I'm entering some name. So it should get that and display that here. It is okay, working on change, it is working. I can write different events instead of on change. I can write on key up. When I write on key up while typing itself, it will get. I can write on blur. That means I can write on blur. On blur is nothing but after you finish it typing, click outside, it will do. You can handle different types of events that you learned in JavaScript. There are so many events you can use, but React will lock all those events. No chance. You can use only on change. That's what they claim, that this is better in handling data binding. So it will not allow to modify on every event. It will allow to modify only on change. If value changes, then I will change. You clicked inside or clicked outside, we will not change, which will happen in general. So that means it can happen in general. So this is what React says, that they are one-way binding. React is one-way binding. So then how to handle two-way binding? It's a lengthy process now. In React, to handle two-way binding, you have to write the events. Temporarily, first I will show a small event. Later, we will have a separate session on events, complete events concept. So, what is the point about one-way binding? So, here the question is, what is one-way binding? It is a data binding technique. So, which allows to access data from source and bind to UI elements and bind to UI elements. It will not allow changes. It will not allow changes to data in UI. It will not allow changes to data in UI. That is one-way binding. So it can secure the data from auto updates. So it prevents accidental data modifications. All such features are good for this one-way binding. Right. Now, here, as I told you, later you will learn about events concept, because in JavaScript you learned on, click on, change on, blur like events. Same events here also, but totally different approach. Lot of different approach you will have to learn here. You need to understand events in a separate. But just to show you this two-way binding, I'm just giving a point. We will detailedly see event binding first. First, see the concept here. So, what is two-way binding now? How to handle two-way binding? How to handle two-way binding? Let's go into the React component. In this component, now we need to write a event for this text box. We need to write the events for the text box. So now how do we write the event for the text box? Here, to write the event for the text box, you know that JavaScript events use a function. We write a function, handle, name, change. Any name you can give function name. And this function should fire up when user is changing the name. That means when you should access this function, call the function when you are changing. So here we are writing event. What is the event? I am writing the event as what? On change. On change. As I told you, detail I will tell about the events, right? We will learn. So here we are using on change. On change, which function? Handle name change. That is the function you have to define. Just the name of the function. You should not use any function calling that you generally do in JavaScript. Just pointing towards the function. That means just a name. Okay. Now this is done. Okay. But how you will collect the value of this element and use it here? How you collect the value of that element and use it here? In JavaScript, how you do is you use DOM methods, get element by ID and all. Without DOM methods, how you will do? So without DOM methods, how you will collect the data in JavaScript? This is your JavaScript. So without using document get element by ID and this, how you will collect the value of this text box? You can collect the value of the text box by using event arguments. You learned in JavaScript, we have two event arguments. One is event, another one is this. Two event arguments will be there in JavaScript. So this will send information about the current element. Event will send the information about the current event. JavaScript events have two arguments. One is event, another one this. You can use simply one this dot value. That means it is going to send the current value, which you can collect here. You can correct the value here. And you can use that value here. That's it. That means without a DOM method, you can access the element from any text box or any drop down. You can get it and use it. Usually what happens here, the same thing will happen here. So on blur, it will display. So this time we are not using a DOM method. Through event arguments, we are accessing. And what are the event arguments? We have this, we have event. These are the event arguments. General JavaScript I am showing. Here, same approach we follow. We have event. This is an event argument. This event argument can collect the value of the text box and we can store. So we can store in which location? Set username event dot target dot value. This refers to the value coming from the text box. It gets the value from the text box and it will use it. That means it will store inside that reference. Okay, now you see this is your React. And now I click inside. I am doing some modification. It is updating. This is two-way binding. Now you will ask like two-way binding working na? Then why you say that it supports only one-way binding? This is not two-way binding. Two-way binding, supporting two-way binding means what? Implicitly it should support without writing any event. React will not do that, but in Angular like technology, you just bind one way, two-way it will automatically bind. It have internal mechanism. That means you make the change, automatically it updates back. You don't need to write events. But that is not possible. That means it is not supporting two-way binding. It is able to use two-way binding, but explicitly. Now let's try the other events. Like suppose I am changing the event. Instead of on change, I am using what? On key up. I am using on key up, which you saw that in JavaScript it is working. Now I am using on key up and let's go here and click inside and try to modify. It's not working. It's not working. I'm unable to modify here. But JavaScript allows, right? And you see here, any other event, you are using any other event. Suppose like say on blur, I'm using on blur, and you see on blur, and I am typing anything, it's not working. It can respond to only one event. What is that event? On change. On change. On change, it can handle the changes. Now it can work. It can work. So that is what the React people claim, that it supports only one-way binding. It will not support two-way binding. But to handle two-way binding, you need to detailedly understand about events. And once you know events, you can easily manage the two-way binding technique. So I will just give a point here. So another question. So what is two-way binding? Two-way binding. So it is a data binding technique. So which allows to access data from source and bind to UI elements. Identify the change in value. Identify the change in value and update back into data source. Update back into data source. So several technologies support two-way data binding with implicit techniques. React requires explicit methods to handle two-way binding. To handle two-way binding. So that is the reason it is not internally supporting two-way binding. It needs explicit methods. So how two-way binding is managed? How we can manage? So to handle two-way binding, you need to learn about event binding. When you know about event binding, then only you can handle this two-way binding. So let's see detailedly about event binding. Don't worry about the code I have written. That code you will understand now. For that, you need to first learn about events. We will learn about the events, then we can implement the two-way binding. So all this time, what you have used one-way binding. That means we are accessing the data and displaying in a paragraph, in a heading, in a div, in a span, in a text box. Even if you display in a text box or anywhere, you cannot modify it. You cannot change it. And to change, you have to implement two-way binding. How you manage two-way binding? So here to manage two-way binding. So we will see, to handle two-way binding, you need the concept of what? Events. So I will give a detailed point here. So React two-way binding. So React two-way binding. So in this first, React will not support two-way binding implicitly. It requires event binding techniques to handle two-way binding. It requires event binding techniques to handle two-way binding. So it requires event binding techniques. So there are various events supported by React. There are various events supported by React, but two-way binding is managed only with on change event. But two-way binding is managed only with on change event. You cannot use other events. Various events are supported by React. So just one syntax I will give here. We have a function handle change will get a event argument e dot target dot value to access the value. To access element value. So just roughly syntax I'm giving, you can store that in any reference. Then we just write input type is text and on change is equal to handle change. So you learned accessing various types of data and presenting the data. Different kinds of data and presenting the data. But any changes in the data, again, you need to update back. For that, you need this approach. You need to use events. Through events, you have to manage. But all events are not suitable. You have to use only one event. That is what? On change. So in order to use this, you need a detailed knowledge on events. You need to detailedly understand about events. Let's see that. First, I will give a temporary example to you. This one I will copy. I will copy this example. This is one-way dot JSX. I will copy this example for you just to understand one way, how you manage one way, right? Yeah. Now, next, to clearly handle this mechanism, you learned how to access and show, how to update. You need to learn a very big concept, that is, so React event binding. It's a very big concept and important for managing all manipulations in UI. So if you are already aware of your JavaScript event binding, because in JavaScript also you learned events, everywhere event concept is same. So I will give a simple detail overview of your events, how they work and how they are managed. Because some changes are there in your React and JavaScript, right? Let's see what are these. And in interviews also, lot of questions will be asked related to this event binding. There are so many technical points also. I will show you. First point, you should know, first thing you should know about, so first concept you should know is what is event. How you define event. Every technology have event. Java uses events, .NET uses events, JavaScript uses events. So what is the concept of event? How you define events technically? Actually, event is a message sent by sender to its subscriber in order to notify the change. Event is a message sent by sender to its subscriber in order to notify the change. Officially, we define event like this. Officially, we define the event as a message sent by sender to its subscriber. So it it follows it follows a delegate mechanism. So which is a function pointer mechanism. It follows a delegate mechanism. Delegate is a function pointer. So in programming, we call them as function pointers. So function pointers, function pointer mechanism. So event is a message sent by sender to its subscriber. I will show you one point. For example, generally you learnt about events in JavaScript already, on click and on change like that. But what you need to know more detail about this concept is, suppose we have a function called insert click, and we are having a button on click is insert click. This is what generally in JavaScript you do. So what happens here is, usually when you ask what is happening here, generally what majority people think is, there is a function called insert click and we are calling that function on button click. That is how people think about event, which is not. Generally, what people think about this structure is, they think that there is a function called insert click and we are calling that function when button click. No, that is wrong. We are not calling the function. Actually, we are pointing towards the function. We are not calling the function. It is not calling the function. It is pointing towards the function. It is a function pointer. It is not a function calling. Let's see the proof for that. What we will do is, suppose here, this is in your JavaScript and you have a button. In the button, we written on click and insert click. So is there any function by name insert click? No. There is no function by name insert click. And if there is no function and you are calling that function, obviously it should show error saying that there is no function by name insert click. And you run this and see now, you will see that. So this button insert, it is inspect, and in the console, it is not showing any error. How come? It should show me an error saying that where is this insert click you are using. That means you are calling a function which is not present. Obviously, it should show error. So you are not calling the function. Then what we are doing, when I click on insert, now it will try to point toward the function and it is unable to find it. Then it will show error. It will show error that insert click not defined. It should have shown this error if it was a function call, but it is not a function call. So it is not showing until or unless you try to point towards it. Event is not calling the function. Event is pointing towards the function. We call it as a function pointer. We call it as a function pointer. In software designing, we call this as, so event follows a software design pattern called observer. In software design pattern, we call it as observer. Event is a software design pattern. And generally, in computer programming, when we develop any applications, we have to follow certain design patterns. Software programming have 23 design patterns. We call them as gang of 4 design patterns. Some of the design patterns which you may learn in your Java, .NET or other technologies like singleton pattern, observer, singleton, iterator, all these are design patterns. So event follows a software design pattern called observer. Observer is a communication pattern. Observer is a communication pattern. Communication pattern means it defines how the communication happens between an object and its function. So technically, event, how it works now, I will show you here. What is the point is, now this is called as function. This is called as subscriber. We call this as subscriber. This is subscriber. And this is called sender. We have a sender and a subscriber. What is subscriber? What is sender? Subscriber contains the actions to perform. What activity to perform, it is defined by the subscriber. When it should be performed, it is defined by the sender. Sender will send a notification saying that somebody clicked me, you do this. Right? Button will send a notification to the function that you have to execute now. That is the reason we call event as a trigger. That means event triggers and it executes a function. That means you trigger an event by clicking the button. It will point towards the function and it will execute the function. It will not call the function. It will execute the function there. That means functions are not called. Events will not call functions. They will execute there. Just we have to send a notification that it is clicked. It completely depends on two important objects. One is sender, another one is subscriber. Sender sends the notification and subscriber performs the functionality. So what is a sender and what is a subscriber in event? So what is a sender in event? Every technology have this sender and subscriber concepts in events. What is a sender in event? What is a sender in event? So it refers to a trigger. It refers to a trigger that points towards specified function. It refers to a trigger that points towards specified function. It refers to a trigger. That means here, suppose I said on click is equal to some insert click like this. So on click is a trigger. On click is a trigger. Pointing towards insert click. On click is a trigger pointing towards insert click. That is a trigger. That is the reason in React you have seen. So I am not using any parenthesis for event. I am just using the event name because it's just a function pointer name. We just need a name of the function where to point. So you don't need to use a parenthesis there. Later you will see various techniques. We can use parenthesis also. What is that parenthesis? Why you need that in event? You will learn. It's a big concept. So technically here that you see in our React, I am not using a parenthesis here. That means I am not writing handle name change like this. I am not doing like this. Right? I am just using name, only name, because it's a pointer. Function pointer needs only function name. Which function you want to execute. That's the trigger. Right? Second important is next point is what is subscriber in event? What is subscriber in event? So subscriber, it defines the actions to perform. It defines the actions to perform when element triggers event. It defines actions to perform when element triggers event. When element triggers the event, what activity to perform, that is defined. And you write like a function. Insert click. And the actions here you have to define the actions to perform. This is subscriber. Event comprises of two basic things. One is sender, another one is subscriber. These are all general JavaScript topics only. There is nothing new of React here. So React will use same JavaScript concepts, but little different. What different later you learn. These are all JavaScript points on. That means event, sender, subscriber, all these are event related basics in every technology, right? Every technology events will use the same mechanism. Now, another point is you should know is what is event handler? What is event handler? These are all interview questions in React.js interviews. For freshers, experienced people, when you are attending React interviews, even at MNC level, lot of questions are asked related to events. Very in-depth technical questions are asked. That means for experienced people, they ask which software design pattern event follows. So you may learn about event in JavaScript, but very few people know which design pattern event follows. It follows a software design pattern called observer, right? So, and observer is a communication pattern used in software technologies. How an object communicates with its classes. That's now technically what is this event handler? Event handler is nothing but now here you are writing on click and insert click. So this on click is actually event. And on click, what the functionality you are doing, this is referring to a function. This is referring to a function. And on click, which function you are executing or which function you are pointing, this entire is called as event handler. That is called a event handler. If anybody asks what is the event you are using, so you say on click. Okay, what is the event handler? On click, insert click. That means on click, what it is doing. So that means which function it is executing. That's what event handler. And in JavaScript, you learned that without event handler also you can write event. How? Without event handler in JavaScript, how you write events? By using event listeners. We have event listeners. By using an event listener, we can add events to the elements without a handler. Because you can use a handler when you are designing. Imagine if a button is dynamically created, then how you will add an event for it? Okay, that means I will show you a point. Suppose I am using a simple div here. Okay, and div have a ID container. Okay, body on load, that is body load. And on body load, what we are doing is we are writing a function body load. On body load, I am creating a button. So document dot get element by create element. We are creating an element called button. And button inner HTML is having insert. Insert is the button inner HTML. Document dot get element by ID. So that is a container. Into the container append child, I am adding that button. Now you can see that in the design, you can see in the design there is a insert button. There is a insert button. And you see that in my design there is no button. Then how you write an event for this now? That means handler not possible, because handler is possible only when there is a markup for it. If there is no markup, you created some element dynamically. I created a insert button dynamically. You can give it any name, insert or update, any name, and it will be update. I created a button dynamically, which doesn't exist at all in my page. Then how you write some functionality for this? There is no chance of handlers anymore. Then how you write events for this? We use event listener. That means what we do? So btn. So before adding, so what we do is we put a btn dot add event listener. Add event listener. How to use add event listener? Add event listener is using event type. What is the event type? It should respond to click. And what functionality it should do? On click function. The function is it should put an alert saying that update. Updated something, I am giving an alert. That means now this button on update click, it should show that alert. This time there is no handlers. We have only listeners. So JavaScript have event handling and event listening. Event handlers usually when you statically define an element. Event listener when you dynamically create any element. So you can't have a handler for that. You have to add a event listener for that. Through that it can perform the functionalities. Because in many situations, dynamically contents are created. That means you said that I want to upload a photo. Then they will give a option, browse and upload a photo. You said I want to upload more photos. When you click more, one more file upload will come. You click more, another file upload will come. That means they designed only one file upload. And if you want more, they are adding more file uploads dynamically. How many you want, you can select. That means dynamically elements are created. Then how you will add the events? So no chance of event handlers. Event handler is possible only when you design an element statical. Dynamically, when elements are created, we have to, even for elements which are already there also, you can add a handler. For example, there is a button. So suppose there is a button and this button is insert. I will put this button inside the container only. Now container have two buttons. One is insert, another update. For insert, there is a possibility of handler because I can write here on click, am I right? That is handler, but without handler also you can write. Suppose its ID is btn insert. Then what you do on body load, document dot get element by ID. What is it? btn insert. We can add event listener. On click, what it should perform. Without a handler, we can write event. In many situations, we do that. Why we do that? For clean separation of code and UI. We don't want any functionalities inside. We want only design. Design separate, logic separate. You write the logic in separate JavaScript file and you maintain logic in a separate JavaScript file, and you don't want any logic related things inside your design. Then what you do, you put all the event listener. That means here I put an alert. What is that? It is what? Inserted. Something like message we are giving. That means it is inserted and this is updated. We are not having event handlers. We are having event listeners, right? So what is event handler? So event handler refers to a trigger and function pointer configured for elements in design. Event handler refers to a trigger and function pointer configured for elements in design. So it comprises of event name and function name. Usually, so we have a button on click is insert click. So this is referred as what? This is event handler. That is event handler. On click is event. Insert click is function. On click is equal to insert click. This is event handler. Once you know these all events detailedly, then only you can design something related to two-way binding. Otherwise, you can just handle only one-way binding. First, you should know detail about all the event concept. So what is event, what is sender, what is subscriber, and what is event handler? Now we have other options, event listeners, event arguments. So much is there about events that we'll see in next session. Right, in next session, we will continue and detailedly learn about events. With events, we can design more complicated examples now. Now we are learning two-way binding, so we can design big examples with lot of API interactions and all. That we'll see in next session. And next session will be again on Monday. Tomorrow, no session. Again, our session will be on Monday. Monday, we will continue with this concept. Okay, right.